All right, so short answer responses. So this is paper one, section one. Basically, when you're responding to unseen texts, it's a skill. And there's a few things that you need to learn how to do efficiently in order to basically just get in, get the marks, and then move on to the next question. So with most skills, as you guys already know, one of the best ways to learn them is to break it down into the different parts of the skill, the different component parts. And then you learn the parts and then you put it all back together. And you've mastered that skill once you can pretty much do it without really thinking about it. Okay, so if you think back to any skill that you would say that you've some level of mastery over, and you think back to when you first started learning, you would have learned little bits and pieces and then learned how to put them all together. So basically, I'm going to just take you through some of the skills that you need to be able to master in order to really respond to these questions quite well. Now, the idea is that in an exam situation, you're not going to go through step by step in the same way that I'm showing you in this presentation. But in order to prepare for exams, you need to go through all of these steps and continue to do it until it's second nature. Okay, in the same way that you would with any other skill. So basically, you're going to practice all the different components, and then by the time you get to an exam, you would have internalized a lot of the steps. So you won't have to actually think about going through them. You'll just do it in your head. A few things that you want to keep in mind. They want every student to at least have access to the exam. So the texts selected are going to be ones that the examiners have chosen because they're confident that most students are going to be able to read all of the texts in the 10 minutes that's allocated to them. When you're reading them, you don't want to be rushing through them as quickly as possible, but obviously you don't want to sort of be slow and take too much time, but you do want to make sure you're using that time well and paying attention to the texts. The stimulus text could be a whole range of different things. So obviously a poem, an extract from a novel, a short story or an extract. There can be different types of nonfiction, things like speeches, essays, articles, and they can be visuals, and they can also be sometimes provide a screenshot or a website homepage, for example. Sometimes infographics, anything like that. Now, a few key things that I wanted you guys to remember. The questions can ask you to refer to a specific stimulus, or they can sometimes ask you to, like, for example, compare, or even just say, select the two texts that you think are most appropriate for whatever the question is, and justify your answer. Questions are usually worth anywhere from 1 to 8 marks, but they could be worth much more. Okay, you could hypothetically have just 2 questions in the whole paper that are worth 10 and 10 or 12 and 8 or something like that. You have 45 minutes. So if you break that down, that means you've got 2.25 minutes per mark. And you want to actually stick to that time and allocate your time according to marks. So for example, if it's a 1 mark question, you want to give yourself 2 to 3 minutes. If it's 2 marks, 4 to 5 minutes, 3 marks, 6 to 7 minutes, and so on. And the other thing is that the amount of space that they give you is supposed to be an indication of how much you need to write. So pay attention to that. Okay, so basically your responses, you need to be clear and succinct. Okay, you get the marks and you get on with the next question. Pay attention to details in the question. So for example, plurals and keywords such as compare and contrast. Make sure you answer the question and remember the module, text and human experiences, and try and get into the habit of analyzing and evaluating all your evidence. So the other question that we normally get asked is how much evidence? So again, you can use the number of marks allocated to indicate how many examples you need. So if you think back to our TEAO tables, basically 1 mark, 1 piece of textual evidence. So that's 1 TEAO. For 2 marks, you want 2. For 3 marks, you want 3. Okay, pretty simple 1-to-1 correlation. However, it's not a rule. It's more a guide to go, this is probably how many techniques I'm likely to need to answer this question. Now, because sometimes you'll get a question, say, for example, 5-mark questions, like a comparison question, you might need to do 2 TEAO for each text and then spend just a little bit more time using your evaluations to compare the two. All right, so the first step is you need to basically get your textual evidence.